मैं क्या बोल रहा हूँ, अपन जितने क्वेश्चंस पूछेंगे वो सब. Hi, I'm Chintan Vasani. Sir, good evening. Sir, it is an e-talk show. It's not a Zoom call. Welcome to Wise Exchange, India's first e-talk show, where we invite the best real estate icons to come amongst us for a one-on-one conversation. We try to understand from them what it was, what it is, and what it will be for the Indian real estate industry. Come join us for a live conversation and let's hear it from the horse's mouth. Hi, I'm Chintan Vasani. Good morning to everyone. Welcome to Wise Exchange, powered by Wisebiz Realty. Wisebiz Realty is a real estate market research, strategic planning, and a closure management company. Wise Exchange is an initiative by us to connect to the person behind the success, the person behind the brand. It's an e-talk show where we have invited number of real estate icons from all over the country. For this particular episode, we have someone not from India, but very much a part of the Indian real estate sector. His iconic buildings in Mumbai and other parts of India are admired and loved. Our today's guest is architect James Law JP from Cybertecture, Hong Kong. James sir is an architect, technologist, entrepreneur, renowned for creating the philosophy of cybertecture, in which a better world is designed with technology to elevate the suffering for mankind. His company's project cover buildings, spaces, technologies, educations, and social design. James sir is a justice of the peace, young global leader of the World Economic Forum, a council member of World Economic Forum Global Agenda Council on Design and Innovation, board member of the Hong Kong Design Center, board advisor of the Hong Kong Designer Association, member of the Hong Kong Trade Development Council Real Estate Advisory Board. Sir is the founder of architecture, interior, technology design firm James Law Cybertecture, laboratory for future research firm Cybertecture X, education institution Cybertecture Academy, and charity Cybertecture for Humanity Horatio Law Foundation. Sir and his companies are winners of multiple international awards, including the FT Asian Innovation Award, Edison Award for Innovation Design for Asia Award, HSBC World Architecture Award, and is the recipient of Asian Arab Award 2019. Sir is an architect of the OPod concrete tube housing design. That video had 25 million views. You guys have to check it, which is designed to elevate the affordability of housing around the world. The Pad Tower, the world's first Apple iPod inspired programmable building in Dubai, and the architecture for the futuristic high speed transportation system called the Hyperloop. Hyperloop again is one of the most trending things right now. Sir received his undergraduate and postgraduate degrees from the Bartlett School of Architecture of University College London, and is Chartered Architects of Royal Institute of British Architects, Architects Registration Board UK, Hong Kong Institute of Architects, Architects Registration Board Hong Kong, and the American Institute of Architects. Sir has a passion of art, social innovation, and travel. He resides in Hong Kong, London, and Dubai with his family. Before I invite Mr. Law, there is a small surprise for him. I have a dear friend of mine, Manuni, to welcome him. She is a singer, songwriter, and her main influences come from pop, hip hop, R&B, jazz, and funk. Sir, we have heard you like music, so we had a singer who is very famous in India to welcome you. She has worked on the background scores of Bollywood movies like YRF's Kaidi Band, Kangna Ranaut starrer Simran, PM Narendra Modi, and Ye Sali Ashiki. She was also a part of MTV's Color of Youth Season 6. She has lent her voice for a lot of advertisements like HDFC Ergo, Spartan Poker. She has played at venues like Blue Frog, Hard Rock Cafe, MTV Flip, and of course now the Wise Exchange episode 3 of James Law. She was also a full scholarship student at the True School of Music from 2015 and 16. Let me present to you Manuni, and this is very special gift to James Law from Team Wisebiz.
Thank you so much, Chintan, for this lovely introduction. And welcome, Mr. Law. It's an absolute pleasure having you here, and I really admire your work, especially the Capital at BKC. So, on this lovely occasion, I would love to dedicate a beautiful song for you. This is My Heart Will Go On by Celine Dion. see you, I feel you. That is how I know you. Go on. Far across the distance and spaces between us, you have come to show you. Go on. Near, far, wherever you are, I believe that the heart does go on. Once more, you open the door, and you hear in my heart, and my heart will go on and on. Thank you so much for having me on. I can't wait to hear your story. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuni. And I have to say that we have architect James Law with us, and he was clapping. Sir, welcome to Wise Exchange. How did you like the song?
Wow, it's the first time I've been serenaded with music before I chat with somebody. So I have goose pimples at the moment. So let me calm down a little bit first.
Thank you, sir. We all are super excited to have you at Wise Exchange. As I've told you, sir, we have designed the whole interview into 3 parts. We're gonna have the first part, what it was when you started your journey. The second part would be what it is, the current situation, and how Cybertecture is coming up with new things and new ways, and what it may be. Like, you are known as Mr. Future. A lot of my friends, they call you James Law is an alien. He's not from this planet, and he has ideas from, like, from different worlds. So we would want to a lot of time in the third part. We'll start with what it was. Sir, did you always wanted to be an architect?
Yeah, I always wanted to be an architect, even when I was a very small boy. And I told my parents about this when I was 6 or 7 years old. And I've never deviated from that journey through school, through exams, through interviews. My life has been very lucky because I found my calling and I managed to follow it with the support of many people. So yes, right when I was very young, I wanted to be an architect.
Right. Sir, as I told you, we had a lot of architects with on board for this particular interview. So you have been an alumni at AA London. How was your experience? They would want to know. Has it helped you in your practice?
So yeah, I did. Actually, I not only did my architecture school in London, but I actually did my high school also in the UK. So my education in England really was the foundation to all of my architectural thinking. And the school that I went to, the Bartlett, was at that time very famous for a lot of avant-garde, forward-thinking teachers. And studying there at that time really allowed me to be supported in exploring some very, very innovative ideas. And I think England is a great place for education because it has a strong history. London in particular is very diverse culturally. And during my time at university, I really learned so much about the breadth of creativity, culture, and also design. And so I'm very lucky to have had that education in England.
Perfect. Sir, your mentor in London was Mr. Peter Cook. And you have interned with, I think, Peter Cook, and also you have interned in Tokyo with Mr. Itsuko Hasegawa. So can you share some experience from your internship at London and also in Japan, Tokyo?
So I did an intern with Peter Cook. He was my teacher at university, amongst many teachers. but he was also the head of our school at the Bartlett during the years I was there. So many people know me for having quite innovative design concepts and very technologically driven kind of design interests. And much of that was nurtured during the years when I was studying with Peter at the Bartlett. A little bit of background about Peter Cook is for people who don't know him, Peter is perhaps one of the most famous avant-garde architect teachers in the world. During the 1960s and 70s, Peter was one of the founding members of a group called Archigram. And Archigram was a architects group that focused on really world-changing ideas, using drawings and using concepts as a way of communicating a new paradigm to architecture. And their designs included really amazing, great ideas like cities that could walk, buildings that could fly, communities that would float, robots that would take care of construction. And it was with Peter and through his kind of personality as a wonderful teacher who always supported his students to pursue their dreams that I nurtured my own interest in technology and in innovation during my years. And I did many interesting architectural projects which borders on things similar to Archigram during my years at the Bartlett. And I got good grades for them because my teacher was also interested in them. Maybe in other architecture schools I would have failed already. So learning from Peter, I also learned that in each one of us, there is a unique talent, there's a unique interest, and it is incumbent on teachers to really recognize and support each young architect in their own passions. And I got that treatment when I was with him. And he actually did something really wonderful for me, which was when I graduated, he actually reminded me and urged me not to stay in the UK. He said, your ideas are a little bit forward thinking. And so it's very important for you to try and go somewhere in this world to intern so that you could really be in that environment of innovation that could help you further your own career. So he actually recommended that I go to Japan. And he also went really out of his way to introduce me to a number of his friends in Japan who are well-known, very innovative architects there. And I was able to go to Japan to meet with them and interview with them. And again, I'm very, very grateful to her for giving me this opportunity because I met Itsuko Hasegawa, who is one of the premier Japanese women architects. And she kindly offered, at that time, a very, very inexperienced James Law a job at her studio in Tokyo. And I proceeded to work with her for about a year and a half in Tokyo, immersed in a kind of completely cyber life of Tokyo, in the technology, in a different culture, working on her very innovative projects. And for a young man, for a fresh graduate who already had a great teacher at university, really supporting me with my interests, and now being given the chance to actually see it come real in the environment of a real office in a totally alien place like Japan, was just an amazing platform for me to grow and really expand my own passions and my own interest in what I was doing. And so I think in life, we must always be grateful to our teachers because they have guided us, they've given us their trust, they've given us our confidence. And in these two particular mentors, I owe so much to them for really giving me the chance to, pursue my interests. Yeah.
Right. So we got to know about London, Tokyo. There is one more country which you have a lot of affinity to. Of course, India, I'm going to take it very soon. But Dubai, sir, you have traveled in Dubai in 2000. We have got to know where you were amazed by the kind of work it was happening. And that time you were just starting out, did that time you decide like I'm gonna make the best building in Dubai? Was it like in 2000 itself that you had decided? We would want to know about your journey with Dubai architecture, sir.
Well, actually, there is a very personal story behind this. So around the year 2000, I had already graduated architecture, and I had been working as an employee in some firms in Hong Kong. And on one occasion, my family decided to say, let's go on vacation together to Dubai. And so I said, okay, let's go. And it was the very first time I'd ever been to Dubai. And when I went to Dubai, I was immediately struck with a kind of, the feeling of audacity of the place. At the time in Dubai, in the year 2000, it was only just starting to really accelerate its development, but it had just built the Burj Al Arab Hotel. And as part of the tour that we were going around Dubai, we actually visited the Burj Al Arab. And out of the whole tour group from the bus, nobody wanted to pay that extra $15 to go inside. But being a passionate architect, I said, I'll pay for that. And I went inside that hotel. And I just marveled, not at the architecture, but I marveled at the incredible sense of energy that this place, Dubai, had to promote a piece of architecture like that. And after visiting the building and coming back to the bus, I sat on the beach next to where the car park was, and I looked at that building, and I had this sense of destiny, I think, to feel that I know that one day I'm destined to come back here and destined to build my buildings here. And sometimes in life there are these things that gives you an immense amount of faith, and I so much of my career has been driven by that, a sense of serendipity, a sense of a destination that you are due to arrive at. And I got that sense at that time. And so after that tour, not long after that tour, I decided to quit my job as an employee architect and started my own firm in 2001. And then I got a call completely out of the blue from somebody in 2005, and from a gentleman who had just been on a business trip to Asia, and he had been on Cathay Pacific Airways, and he was reading through the Cathay Pacific airline magazine, and he saw an article about my work of Cybertecture, which at that time were quite small projects, smaller scale projects here in Hong Kong. And this gentleman who called me actually had just started to be a builder in the UAE, in Dubai. And he had set himself an agenda to build some very, very advanced buildings. He thought his architecture, his real estate would be focused on technology and innovation. So he was looking around for the right architects. And he'd just been to London to commission Norman Foster and Zaha Hadid. And he was on a business trip to Asia, to Japan, to meet Japanese architects, and they was flying through Hong Kong, Cathay Pacific. And he looked in this magazine, and he saw my work, and he got to the office to contact me. And then he asked me, would I be interested to come and visit him in Dubai? And I said, sure, I'd love to do that, and why not? And I was young, I had no risks or anything. So he sent me an air ticket. I went to Dubai, and we spent 1 or 2 days together talking about the work and things like this. He showed me to the sites that he had already bought in Dubai to do his buildings. He bought 3 sites, 2 of which had already been ascribed to Norman Foster and Zaha Hadid. There was a 3rd site which was under competition now between Zaha Hadid and Norman Foster. And I think at the beginning, he wasn't really thinking about giving me a project immediately. But when we went to the site, I said to him, I think I could have a good go at this. I think I could do something with this site. Again, being maybe a bit young, being a bit bravado, being a bit confident, I didn't even think about the fact that I was competing with Norman Foster and Zaha Hadid. And he said, okay, we'll give you a go if you like, but you'll only have 2 weeks. You have 2 weeks to do this. If you come up with something, then I'll fly to Hong Kong to go and see it. And I said, yeah, of course I'll do this. I can do this, no problem. What I didn't know at that time was that Norman Foster and Zaha Hadid's team had been working on this competition for 2 months. And in 2 weeks' time, they were due to give their presentations in London. And so my client said, okay, we'll come and visit you in 2 weeks' time in Hong Kong. So they went to London first. Then they came to Hong Kong. Now, what happened to me afterwards would always be a story that I would probably recount hundreds of times, maybe thousands of times to my colleagues and my family and to my friends. So the moment I boarded my flight back from Dubai back to Hong Kong, I suddenly realized what a challenge I had managed to agree to. And I knew that I couldn't do anything as sophisticated at the beginning as Norman Foster and Zaha Hadid. So I needed to come up with an architecture that would be appropriate to what this client wanted to achieve, which was a technologically empowered building, but not necessarily a building that could be too complex or too expensive to build. And as I was thinking on this on the flight, I suddenly had this epiphany. And that epiphany came from the fact that I was holding at that time, my iPod, and I was listening to music. And I suddenly realized that, oh my God, in this world of emerging technology, a building is also a technology. And why not a building can be like an iPod, where you can store your photos and your music and your habits and really let the building use this content and this technology to help you live a healthier, happier life. So by the time I landed, I had sketched a building that literally looks like an iPod, but 26 stories tall, and had all of these ideas that there would be software in this building through screens, through sensors, through all this automation that would effectively make you live inside an iPod. And so for the next 2 weeks, we didn't sleep. We made models, we made animations, we drew all the plans, we did all the calculations. We worked our heart out. And my client arrived 2 weeks later. He had obviously had a good trip to London, seeing some amazing work from the 2 other firms. Arrived at a tiny, tiny office. At that time, we were only 4 people. Okay. And I was a little bit embarrassed because he'd just been taken to dinner at the Gherkin by Foster's, and Zaha had taken him to blah, blah, blah. And he arrived from the airport straight to our office, and we were a 4-person operation. And I showed him our design and made a presentation. And I remember I put my heart into that presentation, and I really, really, really tried hard to not convince him that we had a better design, but to share with him this epiphany that I had about what buildings could be, and that this building could be built cheaper, faster, but more advanced in concept than other sophisticated architecture. And it would be a new mode of architecture, which eventually I called Cybertecture. And he looked at it, and after the 1-hour presentation, I remember, he's a very, very charismatic man. And he said, James and team, congratulations. You won the project. Oh. And that was my starting point to the UAE, was winning that project on the back of that idea at that time. And, I think sometimes moments like that define key chapters in one's life and one's career. Right. And that was one chapter that really, really kind of opened up things for me.
Perfect. So that was interesting, sir. Now I want to know about how did India happen? I've heard I think Mr. Wadhwa or someone met you at one of the exhibitions. We would like to know, how did India happen?
Okay, so this is the accurate version of what actually happened.
Right.
So I think this is maybe now back in 2007 or 2008. I was already really, really busy in Dubai. I was literally half living in Dubai, maybe more than half living in Dubai. We had rented an apartment in Dubai to be both our office and my sleepover.
Okay.
And what happened was I received another one of these anonymous kind of emails out of the blue from Vijay Vadra Associates. And it was an email that wrote, "Dear James, we have bought a piece of land in Mumbai. We're looking for the right architect. My dream is to create it as a landmark for the Manhattan of India. We should make India feel proud to have architecture that could be world-class, equivalent of London, New York, Tokyo, Hong Kong. And we're looking out for the architect. And would you be interested?" And so I think there was a one-page attachment, which was just a typed-up piece of paper talking a little bit about the land in Bandra Kula complex and how much it had cost to buy. And I was really busy at that time. I was telling you, I think that period of time was probably one of the most tiring periods of time, because I was working on like 12 projects at the same time, running around the UAE and the Arab region. And so I thought this would be a little bit too much of a stretch for me, because I had never been to India. I don't know the Indian market. And so I wrote back very politely. I said, thank you so very much. But because I'm really now fully occupied here in Dubai, I don't know whether, I will be the right person for you. And I think I wrote back really quickly. I literally wrote back like 10 minutes after I got the email. And then afterwards, I got a call. I got a telephone call from Mr. Vijay Vadra, who said to me, "Thank you so much for writing back so quickly. We really appreciate that from you. And if you are really busy and you're in Dubai, we don't mind flying over to meet with you in Dubai, just to say hello." I was like, "Oh, wow, that's so nice of you. Wow, if that's okay, because Mumbai to Dubai isn't too far." But it was still a big gesture on his part to come. And I thought, okay, well, thank you very much. If you do come, I would certainly like to meet you. So I think he came. He flew over with two people, and he came to my apartment. And I remember I was late.
Apartment
office. Yeah. And I remember I was late for my colleagues as well, because we were stuck in the Dubai traffic back from the site. And so Mr. Vadra and his entourage was waiting for us down in the lobby. And I was feeling really guilty that I was late. Anyway, so he arrived and shook hands, and it's amazing that he had come all this way. So went up to the apartment, and I think he saw probably one of the most cramped, literally my apartment. There was like 100 models in there, full of study models, presentation models, drawings, everything. And then we had a great chat for about 2 hours. He also presented what he had been building over the years, which was fascinating, because, I got this impression that this gentleman was absolutely passionate about construction, about building things to the best of his ability. And it was just really, really admirable. And we had a really good chat. And then, afterwards he said, "Would you be interested to come to India?" I said, yeah, I would. As long as, I can squeeze in a schedule, I'll definitely come and see your land, and I'll be happy to, if you want some ideas. At that time, I didn't know or think about getting a project. So he said, yeah, sure, we'll arrange it. And then he left. And then the funny story is that later in the afternoon, I had to go to IKEA in Dubai to buy some furniture. And I went to IKEA. And I bumped into Mr. Vadra in IKEA in Dubai again. So the first thing Mr. Vadra said, "This is destiny. This is God. This is God doing something." So bumped into him at IKEA, and then it's great to see him again. Then the next part of the story was he sent us air tickets to go, and I went back to Hong Kong. And I made this complete silly mistake. I got the air ticket. I went to the airport, and I forgot I needed an Indian visa. So my other colleague flew already from Dubai to meet with Mr. Vadra in Mumbai, and I didn't have a visa to get on the plane in Hong Kong. So what I had to do was just immediately shift the flight to the next day, go to the Indian embassy, plead to them, I'm so sorry, please give me a visa. And Mr. Vadra sent over a letter and things like this. I managed to get the visa, jump on the plane next day, so I was late by one day. Went to India for the first time into Mumbai. It was so nice. They picked us up, put us up in a hotel. We had a lovely dinner. Next day, we had another meeting, and then he showed me to the site in Bandra Kula complex, which eventually became the capital. And I was just wow, because I could sense again, just like I was in Dubai, I can sense that this place had this energy to it that was about to explode, just about to really kind of lift off as a new district in the city that would be more modern and more well planned than everything before. And then in typical Mr. Vadra's fashion, he says to me, like, do you have any ideas? If you do, show it to me tomorrow morning. And so I spent the night in the hotel, not sleeping again, drawing concepts. Right. And my laptop, I was modeling on the laptop. And the next morning, I went back to his office and showed him some ideas. And he said, those are interesting. How about we give you like 10 days to come up with some ideas. So I said, I'm getting this feeling again that God is doing his work, because it's like the same kind of Dubai situation again. So I said, yeah, absolutely. Please come to Hong Kong in 10 days. We'll have something magnificent for you. And so on the plane, I was like drawing left, right, and center. I never sleep on planes, to the extent where cabin crew on planes get worried about me. Time and time again, they would come up to me and say, sir, are you sure you don't want some water? Sir, are you sure you don't need to sleep? But I would just work. And then
you are, my friends, they call you an alien. So I think that is the story behind it.
So I came back to Hong Kong, and I had this idea to create a building which would be unlike any other building ever done in the world, which would symbolize a magnificent kind of hope of India, but it would be technologically very advanced for the people using it as an office. And it was a building that is like an egg shape that would be slanted at a specific angle so that it would take the sun in a certain way. And it would have a structure that would have no columns. It would be floor plates of entirely uninterrupted space, purely kind of held up by the exoskeleton, by the diagrid of the egg. So I immediately called up all of the best engineer friends in Hong Kong, who are actually some of the best. They've done skyscrapers and things like this. I said, I've got this crazy idea. I want to try and do it. Can you help me for the next 10 days for free? I said, yeah, no problem. So we had this company for Arabs who helped us. Okay. Anyway, cut a long story short, 10 days later, Mr. Vadra came again with his group, came to meet us in Hong Kong. Again, saw my very humble office. So my office hadn't grown dramatically. We were maybe about 20 people, just less than 20 people. Okay. Arrived, and we gave him this presentation. And he didn't quite give me the job immediately. He said, we'll go to dinner, and I'll tell you about the answer afterwards. And I think in the taxi on the way back themselves to the hotel to prepare for dinner, they probably had a discussion about whether this crazy idea was appropriate for the project. Anyway, I joined them for dinner that night. And then he said, James, you've got the job. And, apart from that project, introducing me to India, my greatest blessing in all of that experience was, first of all, to have met Mr. Vijay Vadra. And not trying to sound too emotional about this, but he's certainly one of my mentors. He's a tremendously inspirational person full of integrity, full of values that I came to learn during the years that I worked for him on this project, which also went through a lot of dramatic changes that eventually evolved into the capital through very difficult times for everyone. And then also to meet his family, to have made friends with his family, and some of them are now my closest friends in life. Those are the things that really have made my introduction into India incredible. Yeah.
I'm going to send this video to him, and I also want to we wanted to get him on board. Our team is tying up with him. We wanted to invite him for one of the episodes. I'm sure after watching this video, he will be happy to join us. Sir, also because I stay at Aquaria Grande, the building made by you, some details or some things about some story behind how it went into. It came after Capital, right? It was after Capital.
Yes, it came after the Capital. So again, I feel very fortunate to have done that project. We had not done any residential projects in India before that. The Aquaria Grande was the very first one. And but Mr. Vadva gave me the chance to compete in a competition with two other very well-known Indian architects to do this project. And I came up with this idea to do a building which seemed very innovative, but in fact was very much based on a lot of things that Mr. Vadva taught me. He taught me a lot, even when we were talking about the capital, about Vastu, about the simple but important things in a residential architecture, like cross ventilation, like having rooms that are actually usable for people, being efficient with the space, and so I took those on board and then tried to really integrate them into an architecture which was a reaction to a lot of what I saw was the residential architecture in India at the time, which was very square, very boxed, very terrace based, and it was nice, but it was just kind of there was a lack of artistic kind of composition to it, which could give people more than just a feeling of function, but maybe a feeling of inspired nature, something that you could feel proud of as a building, where you only live in a certain apartment, but you would feel proud of that this structure is making a contribution also to the environment around. And so I came up with this idea. At the beginning, the towers were meant to be 4-leaf clovers, because 4-leaf clovers were a very kind of lucky plant. But as it turns out, the plan, it became 3-leaf clovers with 3 fingers to them that really give them privacy as they protrude out of the building. And so I produced that design and made a presentation, and I also learned a lot from the other competitors, what they presented. And again, I was just very lucky to be chosen to use our design as the starting point of creating Aquaria Grande.
We are having a very good time living in that particular building. So, sir, thank you to you and Mr. Vadva for that. Sir, again, there is a question by an architect. He says there are different preferences of a Vastu and also Feng Shui that you guys follow in Hong Kong. How do you try to work on both of them and that present it to any of the developers?
Well, I'm not an exact expert in both, but first of all, I won't comment on the difference in both, because I think you need a very high level understanding to be able to explain that. In fact, here in Hong Kong and in other parts of the world, actually Feng Shui doesn't play a major part in the architecture that we make. Whereas in India, especially for the residential projects, we have met so many clients who from day one tell us that Vastu is so important for them. So we really, really kind of take that on board immediately. I think there are a lot of similarities between the two. I think there's a lot of the respect about direction and space that both philosophies have. And I think there's an element in architecture which is very important to never let go of, which is, aside from the modern space and the planning and the construction and the architectural design, space is very much an inherent part of our lives. It plays with our emotions, and therefore it probably plays with our spirit as well. And so, very important philosophies and faiths involving things like Vastu shouldn't be discounted totally. There are a lot of hidden wisdoms and rules in that are probably going to become more and more important in this day and age, as we are having so many people on this planet with a lot of pollution and disease and everything. Fundamentals like Vastu and Feng Shui shouldn't really be harmful to us, whereas it's probably going to be, healthy for us. So,
Right.
So as a modern architect, I certainly don't discount them out at all. I try to be sensitive to them, try to learn from them, and where projects, especially in India, that is very sensitive because the buyer or the user would feel uncomfortable with the fact that a building has not been designed with Vastu in mind, is that we should be mindful and we should try to bring balance through using both modern architecture and Vastu together.
Perfect. So, sir, we have covered a lot of things in what it was. Now, let's quickly go to what it is. Sir, the current pandemic situation has kind of brought a pause to everyone's life. How is Cybertecture and James Law dealing with the current situation, sir?
Well, I think first of all, I just have to answer as a citizen, just a citizen of the community, citizen of our society. I think each of us are under a lot of stress and a lot of uncertainty about how life would become normal again. I have been, I think I've been very fundamentally struck, just like I think many people, in terms of, asking myself, what actually is important in life? What is the objective and the balance that we need to have in life? Since COVID-19 has shown to us that so many of the things that we feel are important to us and are seemingly was our first priority is now, really, of no value. Without health, we cannot pursue our interests. Without health, we cannot take care of our families. Without health, don't think about what great designs you can do. So this applies to everyone. And so COVID-19 has, I think, reminded me to be even more humble and to be more grateful about the things that I do have and that I could still maintain having. It's also made me feel that everything that we do in architecture, in my job as an architect, is that we should do something of purpose, and that purpose should be well-meaning. That purpose should be about sustainability, about the alleviation of suffering, about how we can build a better and more resilient world for everyone. And the role of architecture and construction and real estate and how we plan our cities and our countries is inherently important, because that's the hardware that we are going to give ourselves to operate in. And if we do not design those with those values in mind, we are going to basically handcuff ourselves into a world that will continue to suffer, especially when we are taught a systemic lesson like now with COVID-19. So I think it is really something that has made me think. And our office, to keep everybody safe, we've actually had to adopt new ways of working, partially from home, partially in the office, through technology. We've become much more mindful about what we expect from our clients and expect from our partners. We've become more patient about what we can achieve because opportunities are not so readily available. But all in all, I very much hope for myself and for the people around me that I have a relationship with, is that we learn to be more grateful, be more careful, be more balanced, use our creativity and innovation to improve on the situation, and to do that for everybody around us through the work that we do. And that's why, in our practice now, our latest byline is we are pursuing an architectural purpose. And without that purpose, the architecture really doesn't mean very much anymore.
Perfect. Sir, everything that is built right now has to be sustainable. How do you take it under consideration at Cybertecture?
Yeah. Well, actually, one of the big challenges is that construction in itself is not sustainable. We have approaching 7 billion people on this planet. Everybody wants to live in a nice apartment like Aquaria Grand, a little bit of a plug for Vadva Group. And everybody wants to drive a car. Everybody wants to work in a lovely office like the Capital, another plug for Vadva Group. And that's not sustainable, unfortunately. We can make it moderately sustainable by designing our buildings to be less consuming of energy, less consuming of materials, less wasteful in the way that they are operated. But a lot of these things are not necessarily in the hands of just the architect. The circumstances have to be in place for that to happen, because sometimes to make a more sustainable building, you have to sacrifice other aspects in order to achieve that. And depending on that opportunity, depending on the builder, depending on the economics, you can only achieve different degrees of it. But we've certainly tried to be clever with some ideas about how we use materials, how we build a building, not necessarily from the ground up, but also more and more so in a modular way from factories, so that we use less labor, we use less waste of materials, and then we do less damage to the environment on the site. So we're looking into all of this. But I think one of the really exciting things that I think I've been involved with is really allowing my practice now to really do projects which are directly contributing sustainability for society itself. So, designing new building types, which I don't wait for clients to turn up, but I tell clients, look, you can produce housing for people at 1/10 the price that you're creating now, in order to approach an affordable market, which is really needed to alleviate the suffering of many people in our cities today. So that's also another direction we're doing, using invention and innovation to create those new solutions and really put them on a plate and really present them to the stakeholders and say, why not consider using these as opposed to waiting for builders to come to us and say, can you do a building for us? Yeah.
Right. Again, sir, OPod is something very similar to what you were saying. The OPod tubular design, where is it going? Like, are there more companies or more developers coming in to take that concept from you?
Yes, actually, the OPod is a very interesting chapter in my life again, because like I said, it's not a typical project where a client has come to us and say, please make a housing. It's actually a self-generated project where I was really concerned about the housing problems that are being faced, very near to me, which is here in Hong Kong. And we needed a new kind of architecture that could be cheaper, faster, more readily available, and to be used in a very transient way in order to let the people who are homeless have a home until they can get proper public housing. And this idea has now kind of gotten momentum. We have received a lot of money from the Hong Kong government, and we are now working with our partners to start the construction of the first OPod housing project, which will have a number of hundreds of units in Hong Kong to contribute to some of the housing stock for the poorer people. But also around the world, we've been approached by lots of interested parties. There has been parties from India who have contacted me about the possibilities of using or licensing this design to provide affordable housing. And We've signed agreements with some other partners in Portugal and in the United States. And we're, step by step, let's see whether this could also become a social movement where, stakeholders around the world feel that there is a model of development that could use things like the OPod to provide the kind of housing stock for people that otherwise wouldn't have any houses to live in. And we're step by step doing that now.
And sir, I know you're super busy. You have your brother in Mumbai who can take care of your India relations. So
thank you.
So much. So,
but
sir,
if you want to have that opportunity, Chintan, what you have to do is give up your nice apartment in Aquaria Grand and live in an OPod yourself on the ground floor at Aquaria Grand.
Perfect. A lot of people who might have not heard about OPod, I would insist you to please Google this particular thing. It's a brilliant concept, and when stacked according, it's one of the most iconic buildings, I would say. Once I think it comes up, I've seen a rendered drawing also. Sir, a lot of architects would want to know from you. You have working right now you're working globally. How do you manage with a team sitting in Hong Kong and doing a project in Dubai or doing a project in Mumbai? How does that work for you?
Well, first of all, I think there's a lot of myths about this. There's a lot of myths about, okay, it's you can have a network and you can just work on the technology and send drawings and things like this. To a degree, you do that, but you can't get away from the fact that architectural projects are very personal. They're very hands-on. If you do them properly, you have to really be there yourself. So for me and for my team, over the years, we've just accumulated a huge amount of air miles. Basically flying to the locations, working with our clients, working with our partners. And that's unavoidable. So you will have to endure the pains of jet lag, red-eye flights from the airports, the suffering between, missing flights and losing your luggage. That's all part of it. And but it's compensated by this immense satisfaction and gratitude for being given opportunities to work in distant places around the world and for you to, learn about new cultures and make new friends. In reality, I think another aspect is that you need to have tremendously great partners. And that starts off with the client. You need clients who, of course, have the resources to keep flying you in, but also have clients who are very, very expert themselves in order to execute the project and to be able to support you to make their dream come true. And so I give a lot of credit to our clients for that extra support. Whereas normally if they maybe commission their local architects to do it, they can be a lot more hands-off. But if they commission me to do it from halfway around the world, they also need to make much bigger commitments in terms of effort, time, but also resources and finances. And then tag onto that is tremendously great partners as consultants who help us to bridge on all of those gaps that we are always going to have, which are we don't know the local codes very well. We can know the basics, but we won't know the details. We are not there to be able to discuss and negotiate the approvals. And we're not going to be there every day on site trying to, problem solve all of the things that are happening. So to have their support as well. And so, again, I use your program today to express my, profound thanks to our clients and our partners and our friends and everybody who's on site, working their hearts out to make, a design come real. And we, the architects, especially the foreign architects, we get a lot of credit for, a beautiful building that comes up in India. But, I tell you, to be honest, 95+% of the work has been done by, our partners, our clients, and our other consultants there in India. And, without them, it would not be possible. So it's the same for all of these other places around the world. We must make effort to travel. We must make efforts to communicate. We must make efforts to learn. But then we are also absolutely reliant on the goodwill and the friendship and the professionalism of all of these partners.
Perfect. Let's quickly go to the last section of the e-talk, what it may be. Future is something I know it makes you very happy. Sir, what do you think is the real estate industry future, worldwide and India-wise? What do you think? What important, interesting projects you are working on? We would like to know in this particular section.
Well, it's always so easy for somebody like me to say, oh, the future's going to be like this, and there's going to be these great things happening and these great inventions and these great changes. And it's always very kind of romantic to say that. But I think right now with COVID-19, I have to be very mindful and careful about, what I predict, because if there's anything about the future is that this has become even more uncertain. But I'm also a person who's optimistic and have faith. And I know that for whatever happens, we will get through this. And if we can get through this in a positive way, the future that is laid out in front of us potentially could be even better than we were predicting before COVID-19. And the reason is that we would have learned so much about what we are weak at, what we have presumed to be safe and resilient, which is not, and therefore we could plan the future better. But if you really want me to future scope a little bit, I think there will be in architecture some pretty big changes in terms of, the way in which buildings are built. I think there is a difficulty right now to continue to build our buildings in the same way. And I think that would lead to new directions in modularity, in automation of construction, and then also in the permanence of buildings, because what you can see is that if society is to survive some of these catastrophic new chapters, we will need society to be flexible. So perhaps my teacher, Peter Cook and Archigram, when they talk about a city that could actually walk away, that might need to come true to a certain extent, where buildings can be relocated and districts can be relocated, or hospitals can be built very quickly and affordable housing can be set up very quickly. So the nature of architecture might start to migrate from something which is tremendously permanent, where you build it and then 50, 100 years later, you knock it down and waste it and do it. You would do something else, which is much more like software. You can upgrade it, you can migrate it, you can change it. And that would be one of the big things I think will happen in architecture. I think another aspect of architecture that would change is that, all of the typologies might change. We have people now living at home, working from home, and they're not going to the office. So the building stock is not very resilient because some are empty and some are over-occupied. And so perhaps in the future, the laws will allow the same building to have offices on certain floors and then apartments on certain floors and hotel on certain floors. And the infrastructure will be there, flexible enough for us to interchange and be much more flexible with our architecture. Last but not least, what I hope in the future is that we have a much more humanistic architecture. I hope we will have architecture which is not just there for show. It's not just there to say, wow, it's an icon. Not just there to be an expression of wealth and achievement and power, but that the very thing that we build around us as a society, which is our architecture, is a stage for showing the very best of humanity, to be an arena for us to interact in the best possible way, to be a kind of reminder for us about none of us can ever live on our own, but that together we can be so much more colorful, so much more healthy, so much more happy. And the architecture, therefore, shouldn't be selfish. This architecture needs to be more humanistic and really become an instigator for all of the positive values that humanity must be reminded to become stronger at, as opposed to partitioning us between the rich and the poor, between the have and have nots, between the grand buildings and then the poor buildings. We cannot do that forever. And I think right now, if I want to be able to curate the future, I hope architecture can become more humanistic and become that binding force of society that I think we've slightly lost our focus on, in the early part of the 21st century.
Perfect. Thank you so much, sir, for coming on board for this particular e-talk show. I have taken few minutes extra from the time I have taken, but thank you so much, sir. Before you leave, my digital team is requesting to all our guests, whoever comes, we take their final bite from them. It has to be, hi, I'm James Law. It's an e-talk show. It's not a Zoom call. I would want you to say that, and we would want to use that, sir. I'll just put you on full screen. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm James Law. This is an e-talk and not a Zoom call.
Thank you so much, sir, for coming on board, and we are very glad that we could have you here, and we are expecting you to come to India very soon and the pandemic to go back away from where it was, and whenever you come down to Mumbai, we would love to host you in Mumbai, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you, sir. That was architect James Law. I hope you liked this video. Please share and subscribe to our channel. We have more interesting personalities coming very, very soon. And we would love to hear from you. If there are any inputs that you want us to get, or anyone you want us to cover in our upcoming interviews. Thank you so much, everyone who joined us today. And thank you, Manuni. Thank you, Cybertecture Hong Kong, Mr. Pando, who's related to James Law, sir, who helped me in coordinating. Thank you to Kripali. Thank you to Harsh. And thank you to Rishikesh, who's helping me with this particular software. And please subscribe to our channel and go through all the videos. Thank you so much. We'll be back next Sunday.